Okay. So basically, we are going to cover how to test APIs and web services as a part of today's session. So I think let's continue the session and let's see what's basically API and all those things. So within the sessions, I'm planning to cover basically basics of the API and what is web services and how to test web services and some sample scripts that we can use to API testing using Python. Okay. So before going into the API, I just want to brief a little bit of behind the scenes context on the API. So basically, before discussing with the API, there's a concept, there's a thing called interface. I think you might learn about interfaces in many areas when the programming language. When we are learning programming languages, specifically programming interface. So basically, my today's session. So the interface is something will uh, available to communicate system and environment. So application and environment to communicate in between application and environment. So we will use interfaces. So we'll little look at little deeper level on interfaces. So basically, I think this will graphically also explain what is interface. So basically, API is an interface again. So API is a one of interface and it will be communicating to independent software components. So basically here you can see, uh, so you can see API has been used to connect server and client. So the server and client will be connected via internet. So basically, via internet, it's going to connect client and server. So basically, to do that, we'll be using API. So that's this API we can consider as an interface. So it also calls as a, so it basically intermediate role. So basically, it will be intermediate role in between server and client. So that's how API will be uh, can be introduced. So basically, API is kind of interface. Interface. So as I previously mentioned, uh, interface. Let me reiterate. So interface between some communication channel or some communication interface in between system and environment. So in this case, the system and environment is the server and client will communicate via the internet via an API, via an interface. So, so any application that we are going to develop today, it will be server and client environments, and basically it will be communicated. It will be communicated via an API. So basically, or interfaces. So any application. So hence, whatever the application that will be available with us for testing, so uh, we need to know how these servers and clients are interconnected, and we need to test this application via this intermediate level as well. The one reason is, so if you think, so if we have a server and if you have a client application, maybe internet banking application, right? So we will have a server in the backend. So there will be database server, web servers, and on top of that, API manager, and on top of that, APIs might be deployed. Then this API will communicate with the web. So front end. So the front end. So we basically front end, what it does is they will just pass through the messages to the backend or DB or the web server via APIs or via these interfaces. So why these interfaces need to be required is because you just can't connect server or DB from the front end, or you can't do whatever the calculations logics you can't handle in client side. Sometimes people might tend to handle some of the logics in client side, but it's not correct. So all the logics and everything need to be handled in the backend, and then only backend will be sophisticated enough to communicate with the front end very fast, and front end there won't be any logics need to be handled, can't be handled. So because of that, every logic, all the logics will be handled in the server, but these logics will communicate it to the front end. So think if you want to select some transactions for internet banking application, you need to do some selections. You need to select your account. You need to say you need to type your amount that you need to transfer. You need to type account types and all this information in the UI. But this information will pass through via the internet to the server. To pass through this information to the server, we will use interfaces. Basically, we'll use APIs. So I think you might, hope you learn already some sort of API, some understanding about the API, since most of you are in right now completed many other modules as well. But if you are not aware it, so that this is basically API. So the testing of these APIs is very essential, because we need to make sure these communications are properly happening and validations are properly happening, and no logic is handling the client side and all the logics are handling server side and all these things. So because of that, we need to make, since we need to make sure, we need to test the API level testing as well. So I previously mentioned, right, there will be three different type of testing types. One is unit testing, that's basically code, then API or web services testing, and then UI testing. So the API testing is also one of fundamental key requirement if you are doing the testing of any application. Right. Then let's move on. Probably the next thing is, so how API can come. So the previous that I mentioned, so the client and server communicate via API through the internet. So, but how does they come? So, so that's the other challenge. So that what we need to know. So basically, to communicate. So we know if I am going to communicate with you, I will use a language, the English language. In this session, I am using English as a language to communicate with you, right? But similarly, so if two APIs are the APIs are available, and if they are going, if APIs are communicating in the front end, the back end, so he need to have a communication language, right? So that we call protocols. So always to talk to two different APIs or connected to different interface, two different applications via API, then the API should know a language to communicate with both parties. So that we call protocol. There are various type of protocol. Various protocol definitions are available. We can, based on our requirement, based on our technology, based on our situations, we can figure it out what the best protocol we could use to communicate with the APIs. That protocol is a fundamental requirement. If we are going to implement set of APIs to communicate from a server side to client side, so then there should have certain set of protocols to communicate that between these so channels. It's like this, right? So so if you have API, so it's like a burger, right? So inside the burger you can see the meat slice. That's kind of API. Then will be communicating with other uh, things that we call protocol, right? So basically, protocol will communicate via API and contact with other people. So that's how the API will behave. And so these protocols, we will have various languages, message types, so various things. So TCP/IP is one of key protocol we all know, right? So for the communicating between the network devices. Right? So if you want to communicate to your laptop with the switch or network, so you can use TCP/IP. So if it comes to the banking, so if you want to communicate ATMs, right? ATM need to communicate with the bank system. So then they will use ISO protocol. So that's another messaging type. So if you take it as a trading platform, stock exchange trading platform. So trading platforms the brokers will come in trading platforms and contact, and they will do the transaction. So if they want to do that, they will use fixed as a standard message. Fixed protocol will be used. So various protocols are available in the industry. Those are standard. Most of them are used. So while there are certain standard protocols, these protocols will be used basically communicate for various things, right? Various definitions are available. So basically, I use so, and then especially in the banking environment, if you are going to communicate with international communications, right? You use Swift message. So if you are going to transfer some amount from Sri Lankan bank to the US bank, so it will go to Swift protocols. Swift protocols will be used to contact both APIs in Sri Lankan bank and the US bank. So they will communicate via API, but they will use Swift messages. Similarly, if we are going to talk to within ATM and banking system, they will use ISO messages. If trading platforms or exchange, they will use a fixed message. So if you are going to communicate in the network devices, right, then it will use a TCP/IP protocol. So that's a few examples. So with this APIs, right, so there are main four, actually mainly three. Some people will say it's four, but even it's four, it's actually three. So there are three different type of APIs we can find out in this world. Right? One we call public APIs. Right? So, do you know what are the public APIs? Have you used any public APIs for a certain thing? So basically, Uh, so if you are going to use, so I think you might have seen some of the websites or some of the news channels. So they might use some Facebook streams, right? People can comment via a Facebook as a Facebook stream, or people can put X messages or Twitter messages, right? So they can that some of the websites or some of the applications, you can see some streams integrated. Right. So how they did this? So this Facebook, this Twitter, this X, and all these has public APIs that are exposed to public. Anybody can use these APIs and integrate it with their systems and receive the. They can receive news. They can receive different information, something like that, right? So they can do that. That's how it is. So this we call basically the public API. So. If one good example is if you looked at um, Google Map, right? Google Map has their common API. If you want to integrate into one of your application, you can use Google Map public APIs. So in addition to that, there are another set of APIs that we call as private. I think imagine that your organization has your own application, maybe HR system, or that will be communicating within the internal applications. Take you if you want to put a leave for a certain dates, right? You need to raise a leave. So if you have a HR system that you installed it to a mobile application, there's a mobile application for putting raising leaves that installed in the mobile, and but it will be communicate only with your organization that serves. So that means that's very specifically for your organization and only restricted access. Only the people, only the employees of this organization can this mobile app and communicate it with the server and raise the leaves or something like that. So even I think if in university, if you want, if you are going to look into exam results, so that will be very private and not the students of these applications will not be public and it will be communicating as a private APIs. But when it comes to in addition to the private and public, in addition to private and public, there's another type of APIs that we call partner API. This partner APIs, like proprietary API, you can get their services. They are kind of a public, but you can get their services uh, for a specific reason. Sometimes you can pay for them and get into your risk. Like if we are an internet banking application, so if you want to get the services of uh, Mastercard or Visa card applications, so they will have their public kind of public partner APIs that you can purchase. You can pay for them and get the connectivity. So that's a partner APIs. Basically, so this are openly available, but only the restricted customers, authorized people will have. So these are the three different type of APIs that you can find out in the public. So any API that you can come across will put into one of these three buckets. So are you clear with that till now, or do you have questions? Right. Okay, so these are set of public APIs that is found out on the internet. Even you can find out. So if you want to see the weather reports, there are many with the set of APIs. So you can use if you want to get sports information. So like football, you can there are many sports APIs. So like food and restaurant, music, dictionary, even dictionary. So even search if you want to use some search engines, there are many open APIs. These are few types of pages, especially booking and reservations and looking finance. I also here. I mean, you can find out all these APIs, you can use them. So if you go to this link, you can find out this certain set of APIs as well. Or most of these APIs are public, otherwise they will come as a uh, partner APIs. So most of none of public private APIs will be published publicly. There are a few examples. I'm not going to use these examples. Yeah. Right. API documentation is one of fundamental requirement of the APIs when we are going to deploy implementing APIs. This is a standard. You need to develop API documentation yourself. So without having any documentation, you can't develop any API. I think if you are going to develop application and you are going to connect front-end and back-end via a set of APIs, then you need to develop a API documentation and publish it. So API documentation will mention about the parameters, headers that we are going to use in the APIs and how these parameters will pass the value and certain conditions and all this information will have to develop as a documentation and release it. That's a mandatory guideline if you're using any development documentations and it's kind of a self-documenting materials. These are few explains and time, but I will share this link so you can go to the API specs or the API documentation. So there are certain different type of stability based on the stability. So we can categorize this into three areas. One for uh, unstable APIs, unstable APIs. So basically unstable. Yeah, it can be changed, it can be renewed in future. So it's not certain. So it might work today, but tomorrow it might be changed. Various requirements. So it might get removed as well. So other type of stability is backward compatibility. Basically, most of the APIs has to be backward compatible. So if we have developed the new API, but it's still the if you are going to if you are using all the APIs available, then it should be workable. Or if we are develop a new API, but it's still the front end is in the old version of front end, and but still you should be able to communicate with the new APIs you develop. The backward compatibility should be available. And forward compatibility as well. So both backward and forward compatibility should allow. So and totally stable APIs means there are clarifications. Once you develop, you will not allow change. Maybe on instance. So because they are mission critical, and if you are going to change, it will be impact for many other applications. And because of that, if you want a new requirements, you cannot change. So then you have to develop another new API and introduce not the change existing. So basically, these are the four characteristics that we might found in the APIs. If APIs are changeable, then it's equal unstable. If it's backward compatible, we call forward compatible. Forward compatible is completely is API that not allowed to use, allowed to change for anyone stable APIs. So this is another type of concept of one is part of the APIs web services. So before we go into the web services, we really wish so we can just want to verify once we can use them. Okay, so let's look into these web services. So web services is basically some generic kind one type of web page. So it it again can communicate within the two devices, the two applications, like basically backend and front end, or uh, backend devices, or backend databases, and also you can communicate with the two applications or two environments. But it it, it doesn't have a dependency in the architecture or the technology. The web services are independent, and there's no dependency based on the technology that we use, based on the architecture that we are going to use. That there's no dependency, and it independently communicated with these interfaces. They are independent. So that's a fundamental. We are independent. So it goes where internet, and it will go as a HTTP request. Since it's going over HTTP request, so we call these are web services. So, but these web services are basically kind of API that will communicate with the back front end and back end. Also, applications we are independent and independent, technology independent platform. The web services are one of the commonly used API in the current applications, especially in developing use web applications in the real world. So all these web applications are today, if you are going to connect, we will be using APIs. When you are going to use mobile, any mobile application, it will be used APIs instead of APIs to communicate backend. Even web applications, majority of web applications, we use web services to connect the back. So it's another type. But regardless of the technology or the language that we are going to use, so we can use the web services to communicate each other. So that's the fundamental value of web service when we are comparing with the rest of APIs, different type of thing. So when we look at web services, I think there are three different roles, and this actually not we only related to the software testing, but I just want to so give some understanding about it. So three different type of roles are there. That the first role is the provider, service provider, and the requester, and the registrar. Service provider brings services and it available in the internet. So service provider is the person who develop these services. The requester is the person who is consuming. Right? So think if you are consuming Google Map, you are a requester. So if the person who developed Google Map, then it's Google is the provider. The service registries, these are logically centralized and stored. Or developers can use it, publish it. So these kind of people we can consider the registry. So if you looked at the protocol stack, so then we have a service transport layer, messaging layer, service description, and service discovery. So I'm not going to detail these technical aspects. These are kind of a development activity, but I just want to give intro. So this is how we communicate. So service transfer will go the HTTP, and the messaging will go in the XML. And service description you can go it as a WSDL or something like that. And service directory is UDDI or something like that. So different type of thing. So this is how it communicates. Okay, this is some sample web application communication model I would like to show you. Uh, Let me introduce. So this is number one in the front end, your browser. So number two is your server, right? So backend server side scripts. And number one is content browser, web browser. So basically, web browser will communicate with the server via HTTP request. You can see the HTTP or either HTTPS. Now we are not using HTTP because of the security concerns. We use HTTPS request. So it will go to the right. So this how it will be communicated, right? Where it will communicate via HTTP and it will be communicate back again HTTP response. So we call HTTP request will go to the via the internet to the back and we'll get a response. You look at the third. So the client side scripts will make sure this will go to the number two. So we go the ad. So then, so the internet, so Ajax or any asynchronous web interactions will use to communicate between one and two. Right? The fifth is WebSockets will enable interactions by browser to the web server. So we'll, at this point, WebSockets will be used to communicate each other. So the internet will be used to public people. So, and it will go back HTTP request and come to the CSS or JavaScript or HTML scripts, and it will go to the browser, and you can see via a mobile device, so something like that. So you will get the response from the front end, maybe your PC, and it will go as HTTP via a client-side scripting, and it will go to the web via a WebSocket, and it will communicate with this web server, and we will get the response back HTTPS, and yeah, it goes via the internet, and will come back to the client, and it will be converted to your mobile phone, and it will call your responsiveness. So based on the mobile phone's device sizes, it need to be responsive. It need to be changed its sizes and people responsive. So that's basically the entire web application structure, right? So web services will communicate like this from one end to other and then come back. So we call HTTP. So the communication will go as HTTP request, and response will come as a HTTP response. Right? This is how web application structure that we can form first. So when communicating via a web service. I just want to give this architecture overview because then you easily understand what we are going to do in the testing. I am pretty sure this kind of, you will go a little deep dive in these kind of concepts, part of your other model subjects, hopefully. But but regardless of what you are learning, but I just want to introduction. That's why I taken this part. Okay. So the next thing is there are various web services, right? So when we come to the web services, we usually discuss the interface. So there are various interfaces, and one type of interfaces we call API. And when it comes to the API, we call there are many APIs, and web services are one type of API. And now what I'm saying is there are many web services, and I just want to lead by a few web service types, right? So basically, SOAP is a one of key common web services that introduced in the early days. Because SOAP means Simple Object Access Protocol, right? So it's defined based on the W3 standards. So W3 standards are certain standards available in the industry. So based on W3 standards, the SOAP web services type has been used, and it uses XML to communicate from the front end to the back end. You use XML format messages, and all these messages are HTTP transport protocol issues. Right? So because of the HTTP, it's not get blocked for communicate with backend to server, and it mostly it did XML message type. So then this is a kind of whole. The rest is one of newest uh, web services type. So we call representational state transfer architecture. That's a REST, REST. So we sometimes some people call RESTful as RESTful services, RESTfulness services, something like that. So, but it's okay. REST basically representational state transfer architecture. Again, this use the HTTP, right? Same as the SOAP. So REST has introduced to alternative to SOAP. So REST very simple messaging type that they use the URL basically rather using the XML format. It passes messages in a kind of a URL. So, right, inside the URL, he will pass the messages, and it has a header and a description, two different type of things. Uh, and basically it uses the XML plus JSON format. JSON is one of the newest format. So you might heard about JSON, right? He can use either XML or either JSON. And there are certain methods that available in the REST. So we'll deep dive later. So basically it used to communicate mobile and web applications with the backend, and it's very fast. And so that's that rather than if you're comparing the SOAP, it's very fast and smooth. Right? So that's why RESTful web services or REST web services are become a very familiar with the people, and it's commonly used by now. Not like SOAP. SOAP are now it has been given up most of the cases. Let's go a little. So when it go to the RESTfulness web services, they have few methods, but mainly they have four different type of methods that they use to communicate. Right? So unlike many other languages, so they have or not only four, there are a few more, but majority of their methods are out of these four. So that we call get, post, delete, put. Right? So we are using a JSON request and we are using HTTP request. So we can pass these messages to front end to back end. So basically get means if you want to get some information, then you can use a get message. So get some information means if you want to get weather details based on your location. So you can pass your location and get your weather information of your location. Maybe you want to get the weather in the Nugegoto, Jeram, or Maharatoma, then you can use a get request and call to a common API and get the weather information. it's going to rain now, or within next hour whether it's going to rain or something like that. Right? Those things you can get from the common API. The post is thing you need to post. Right? So I think this is one good thing is I have seen that Google Map. We can now post messages. So if there are cops are there, right? Police people are there, you can report. Here in next junction, there are cops, something like that. Then you can use the uh, post message and you can send a new message. So you can put a post, right? So that we call post. If you want to send some information new, you can use the post and delete. So think you put a post to the Google Map, there's a cops are in front of next junction. But unfortunately, you mistakenly put it. So then you can use the delete method to delete that. So then nobody can visible your post again. So it is deleted. Okay, so think someone has put a post. So there are cops in front near next junction. But when you're passing the next junction and you see that the Google Map post is wrong, you want to update it. So then you can put a put message, PUT, put message and mention there's no cops now, something like that. So you can update the message, that you can update the information. So basically, using these four methods, you can get done anything. So that's a smart behavior of the RESTfulness websites. By using these four methods, either using get or post or delete port, you can get it done whatever you want. You can pass or any type of messages to the backend and server and get back the answers based on this. So that's why it's became very smart and very usefulness, and everybody is currently using for it. So client communications, especially web applications and mobile applications. Um, is this clear to you all? So Bitcoin is success. Basically, these are the four methods you need to know. Very easy. You can use RESTful web services using this post. Even if you're going to develop this kind of web services, it will be easy. It's just the four methods you need to handle. Any questions, Srina, for output? Okay. So other thing is, so if you are going to use any of these four messages, you will get a response. So think if you put a post message, if you put a get, if you send a get message to get your weather information about your location. So you pass the coordinate of maybe your university, so maybe something like that. So to a one of weather.com or something, some application. So they have a set of public APIs. You pass your location and you request weather information. So you will get you have the get message. So think if you pass correct message, you will get a success message, 200, 2x's. Or so 200 or 201, 202 or something, 210, 250, something like that. Success message always start from 200. So 2xx. So you will get a success. But if you don't want any success message, if you want to get a just information, that it will start from 1xx. So you pass some location. Unfortunately, weather.com doesn't have that information about this specific location. They don't know, they can't understand that location. So they will redirect to someone else to get that information. So then you will get a response from 3x's. So there are client side errors in your application. When you are passing, you can't pass your location because your decimal points or something you got wrong. You need to pass 4 decimal points or something like that, but you pass 6. So incorrect. The client side validation got failed. So then you will get a 4xx message, 404 or 4401, 405, something like that. So there's a server-side error. You send your message correct in the backend, but unfortunately, backend he unable to process and he got an error. So then you will get a 5xx message, server error. So using these status codes, you can clearly understand, very easily understand what happened to your request. If you have done the correct get request, you will get the correct information. If you had put the correct put message, you will get the correct messages. Based on the error messages or the other messages you are getting, you know what exactly happened to your request. So it's very easy to troubleshoot and communicate. So because of this 4 different type of methods plus these error codes, status codes, not actually error codes, status codes, you can very clearly communicate via the RESTful web services. So it's very simple and very easy. So that's why the RESTful web services have become a very popular in the world right now. Okay. So any questions till now? Okay. So the microservices. So what's one of latest trend? So the services, so these kind of services, the web services uh, are very popular, but now so we have a new concept called micro web services. So micro web services are basically kind of a uh, it's kind of a so if you want to get it small services, you will call another set of small services. So think if you are going to get weather information, the weather application will communicate it with the few more services based on your so one services will give uh, the rainy conditions. One services will give the windy conditions, wind conditions. One services will give uh, the heat and information, temperature information. So so if you have weather, if you are passing to your weather API, he will provide the weather. But under the weather API, they have 3 microservices. They have one will give the temperature, one will give the rainy situations, another one will the wind situation. So combining these two, you will get at one result. But actually, there are different types of microservices. Why these microservices are valuable is think you need 2 different type of weather APIs. One API you need to get temperature and wind situation. Another API you need to get temperature and rain information. So rather having 2 different API, if you have these microservices, you can combine these microservices together and you need to get whatever the correct results you want. That's easy. Right? So because of that, so microservices has been more popular now, the web services as well, but it's a kind of web services. But it has a micro level services and you can combine and get your exact results. And so that's where now we are in the web services context. Hope this is clear. Okay. So all up to now, what I discussed about is kind of an introduction about the web server. Basically, I described the interfaces, then I came to the API, then I came to the API web services, and then 2 different websites, open RESTfulness web services, and now I deep dive the REST APIs, REST web services. So that's how I deep dive up now, right? So if you're going to test these web services, so you can't just test using like a manual test case. You need to use tools. There are various tools, Postman, REST, SOAP UI, SOA test, uh, HTTP master. These are different type of tools, right? But actually, you don't need to have tools. So these are These are the different vendors, they develop their own tools, but ideally you know need to have a write tool. If you know Java or Python, you can use on your library and you can test this web service very easily, right? So if you are going to program it to handle this web service testing, you can easily develop. But same time, you can use one of these tools as well. Postman is one of very popular tool with both developers and testers as well. But I will be share some sample code that I developed to test web services, right? So I'm not going to deep dive that area, but if you would like to learn more, you can use that JavaScript to Java code to learn test. But I will do it manually today and I will show how to do that. So testing web services, again, the same process. We need to identify the requirement, then we need to write test cases, then you have to have detailed test cases, and then you need to start testing using a tool and capture the results. And if there are defects, you need to start defect reporting and manage. That's the basic flow. It's not changed. So these are two tools, OPY, Postman, VRES, HTTP master, HTTP, QTP also can be used. Most of these are proprietary tools. Some have the free versions as well. At the same time, community editions are available. At the same time, commercial editions are also available. The Postman, you can use a free edition. So you also have the community edition, but same time they have commercial editions as well. Okay, so before I move to the automation part of it, I will show and I describe how to do that. Let me take some samples. Yeah, hope you can see my screen again. So this is set of sample set of APIs we just taken from one of developer, so that we are basically using to uh, learn the testing. Right? This is Fast API version 0.1.0. So this is how documentation. So this is given already, and anyway, I will share this URL in the chat as well. Uh, this is available in my slide deck that I already shared. So this is basically set of API documentations. I hope you remember I mentioned when you are developing API, you need to develop the documentation. That's a mandatory. This is set of API documentation that develop for a fast APIs, right? So basically it has 6 APIs. So one is root. We will get just root information. So you don't have any information. Another second API is this is a get API. You can call this get API and get the root information, basic information about the API. The second API is a put. This also are web services. The put is you can create a sample task, maybe dummy task, right? So if you want to create a task one, you can create task one. You see the create task. This is the create task method, right? Trace API. Give me a second. Right. So this is the put method. So basically, put method is you are creating a new activity. So right. So as I mentioned, so put will be used to create new activity. So then not actually new. So the exist you can create even edit existing one. You can create one. So let me show that slide that we discuss. Right? The post is to create new one. Put is to update existing one or create new one. Either one, right? You can use for any of these things. So he can create a task. So once you create a task, you can get that task information using get command. If you get task and if you pass the task ID, the task that you created, you will have ID, and if you pass that ID, you will get information about task. So there's a task list. So you can get the task list by use ID. So think there are three different type of users. They create multiple tasks. You create 5 tasks. I created another 6 tasks. Somebody else created a 10 tasks. So if I want to list down my tasks, so then I can pass my use ID and see what are the 6 tasks I create. Something like that. Right? So the update task is you can update the existing task that you already develop under the create task. The delete task is you can pass the task ID and delete the task that you did. So these are the 6 methods they develop, he developed. So I will show how to test this manual, right? So here himself he has given a testing capability in the documentation. Usually we need to give this kind of swagger we have to develop. So he has mentioned the parameters, no parameters. He has not defined any parameters. Just as 200 successful responses should appear, right? So I mentioned, so there are multiple response codes, right? If it is successful, this will 2xs. So in the code he mentioned, in the documentation he mentioned, if it is success, you will get a 200 message. So that's what he mentioned. Okay, then let's see. So we can try it out here. So he has given option to try it out. Right? So if you can execute, no parameters, you don't have anything to pass. If you execute it, you will get the result. This is the result. You can see the 200 code. 200 code appeared. Response body is hello world from to do API. These are sample code he developed. So you will get in this, right? So this is might not much clear, but I will show that other API that will be more clear. Put. Put is a create task. So parameters, no parameters, but you have to pass. This is the response body. This is a request body. So this is the parameters you need to pass. Content, you need to pass something. Use ID, you need to pass some string. Task ID, you need to pass string. Is done. You can write false or true or something like that. You can So if you're going to try this, let's see how to try. This is the responsibility. You can type here content. Use ID, task ID. So false, I'll keep like this. So this I can execute, right? So that message will be sent to the server. So you can see the response. Then he will send the response back. So that's what I mentioned, right? You will get the response back. So as I mentioned, the last slide, right? You will send the request to the server and you will get the response. The HTTP response will come to the front end. So the same thing will happen. The response is this. This is the response. You get 200 success code and you get the response. User ID is compiler, lecture 9 is false. This is the created time. This is task ID. This is my task ID. And this is some further information. So similarly, think if I pass something incorrect, I think I am removing this content. Let's see what will be. I think it's still excluded. It is not optional. No, it's got error. Right? So I removed one parameter. So then I execute it. I got the result. What's the code? 40022. What is 400 is? I mentioned, I showed it here, right? 400 means client error. So it's a client side error, right? Because it's required. So because I didn't pass client side, it got a client side error. So if I copy back it here, now if I save, I get success. So think you disconnect the internet and if you got backend error, you will get a 500 message. So unfortunately, I can't show it here because I can't network disconnectivity. So, but similarly, I got a client. Similarly, you can get the other error codes as well. So other thing is, so now I executed correctly. Let me copy task ID. This is my task ID, randomly generated task ID is given here. So I copy this task ID. Right? I'm showing. So I have another method. So you can remember, right? Get task. I can pass the task ID and get the task. So let's see what is, just need to pass a string and he can give it, right? So let's see what is how he has developed this web service. So here you need to pass task ID. So I already created a task. I just put a task ID. Right. So what is, so you can see this is my task already created. That information is obtained. It's a get method. He using my task ID, he identified the task I created and gave back to me. So I think if I give an incorrect task ID, then I will execute what he will do. So he will do a client side error because he don't find this task. So You didn't give anything. I think he will not capture. You can type something similar and execute dummy value. So again, he will tell, I don't have this task not found. Right? So that's there. But think I created another task here. Lecture 9, demo 2. And I execute it. The new task is created. Sorry, it got a server error. So I think server side error is there. So unfortunately, there is an internal server error, right? So he got a server error. Seem to be a service working. Let's try. Got it. No, it's still getting, now it's get created, right? So I will get the this task ID and I will check that information is correct. I will pass this setting. You can see the task I created here. So you can see the task I created here, right? So this is how the web services are working usually. So that's what I want to show you. So you can try other web services as well. Go on. So I'm not going to deep dive. Very simple. You can get the task list by user ID. Even if you want to delete it, so I will show that. You can just delete it. Try it out. You can give the task ID you created. Delete. So it's deleted, right? So now let's try to get the task ID again. What 11? There's no task, shouldn't be any task ID like that. Score, no task ID, right? He couldn't find. He couldn't find. You can see this task ID is couldn't find. Right? So that's right. That's you can play it this, right? This is a very good sample set of API web services that I found. So you can try it for a learning purposes. Right? I think same using same. Let back come back to my session. Using same API and you can go through the scan this QR code and find out the code, right? So there is a web services code. So let me show that Python code. You can try it your own. I will show that. You will drive to a this is sample code. So you can see test web services. This is the code. Get this Python code. It use request library. You have to import request library. You have to set it up this library in your Python IDE, and then you can use this code and try your own test in this API, set of APIs. Right? Sample code is given. You can try it your own. So I'm not going to deep dive that part. So then Going back to my slides. So this is what I want to discuss with you all, what are the APIs and how to do the API testing. And you can do set of API automation as well using the samples, test cases and script I shared. So try it you all. So I don't want to give that hands-on session today, but you can try it and you can have any questions. You can ask questions when probably or anything another day I can show demo as well if needed. And there's a small quiz. So scan this QR code, and this is already in the LMS as well. Write your own. This is also one of fundamental area you need to know. You need to have some knowledge for exams as well. Okay, I think that's all today's session I have to do. So basically, I just want to do the deep dive on the websites and how to do the testing. So try the demo URL I have given. You want try to test various combinations, various test conditions, incorrect, valid items, and same time use the code Python file I shared you. Use it and try it. You want to try the web services test cases automatic. Okay, I think that's all. So for today's sessions, let me stop the recording. If you have any question, you can ask it now.